Real quick, this is my CNC router, and this is going to become a set of grips for a new Colt Python revolver. That, no, I do not own, but I have reviewed on the channel. Just thought you might find that interesting. Hello and welcome back to Tinker Talks Guns. Today we're going to be talking about the Smith & Wesson Model 1422, a rather svelte, compact 22 with some very odd design features. Like, you note the ejection port is right here, just above your hand, on the right side of the gun. And when you pull the slide back, it quickly becomes apparent that something here is not normal, because the barrel is actually on the bottom. And this was part of the series, as the same series of pistols as the Smith & Wesson 422. 1986 or so, Smith & Wesson introduced a new full-size 22 long rifle pistol with an alloy frame, very thin and svelte, very nice, to compete with the like of the Ruger Standard, the Browning Buckmark, I think, was around. And it was based on the Smith & Wesson Model 61, a rather bizarre 22 from the dawn of the 70s with a 5-shot magazine. But as you can see, it has the same nothing up here and the barrel on the bottom, and even the trigger is shaped pretty similarly. This was based on the Piper Bayard 1908 32 caliber semi-automatic pistol, which for decades was the smallest 32 caliber semi-auto in the world, and which shares its design weirdness, which for some reason, there we go, rather stiffer springs because it's a blowback 32. And you can see, once again, the barrel on the bottom, recoil spring above, and it's just a really odd little pistol. But the 422 came out, and I bought one, and it was really good. Now, I'd heard they were susceptible to getting dirty, so I decided I would just run mine until it stopped working, and after 1,300 rounds, I gave up because the gun just wouldn't stop working, and I regretted it because it took hours to clean that gun. I'm never doing that again. So the compact 422 was introduced in, I believe, 89. I had notes somewhere. I have no idea what I did with my notes. And was continued to be made until 1999. So it actually outlasted the 422 series, which ended a couple years prior to that. Now, it is a straight blowback pistol with an 8-round magazine and some very unusual features, which we'll get into in detail shortly. But before we get into the weeds, I'd like to thank my supporters on Patreon. Your contributions help more than you know. I'd also like to thank channel benefactors, those individuals and businesses who have contributed in so many ways and really helped make this channel work. So, on with it. The first thing that you want to know, or that I want to know about a pistol, is, does it work? And yes, it does. That was acceptable. So the gun shoots very well, and with a little bit of effort on my part, it was very easy to produce good groups and even good rapid-fire groups. You saw at 20 yards, I was not lingering over my shots and yet still managed to produce a credible group. The gun does seem to be shooting a little bit to the left. That may be user error because I was having a great deal of difficulty seeing the sights, and when we get to the tabletop, you'll see why. And I really like this little gun. I've always liked the look of them just because they're so different and kind of spacey, and they are very, very flat, excepting the grips. So let's have a closer look at this on the tabletop. So the 2214 is a pretty compact gun. It's 6 inches overall length, 4.5 inches high, and with the exception of the grips, the body of the gun and the frame is about 5/8 of an inch thick. And you don't get much slimmer than that. Now, it has an 8-round magazine, which is released by this lever on the front. It's a little bit reminiscent of the magazine release on the old Savage 1910s. And putting the magazine release right in the middle of where you grip the gun seems weird, but I have never, on the 422 or on this gun, ever managed to dislodge it accidentally. It does mean you have to shift your grip to change magazines. As you can see, the magazine shoots out with considerable authority. Let's see if it pops. Yeah, it pops pretty good. And it has a plastic follower with these nicely serrated metal tabs, so you can pull down on the follower as you load the rounds. Now, I found I can just load them normally, but it's just a little bit easier to do it this way. And the 8th round is a little fussy going in, but once it's in there, it's fine. Also notably, the Model 41 magazines will fit in, and also the 422 magazines. And it has, as you can see, the same type of plastic follower and knurled nub arrangement. But this one holds 12 rounds. And the 41's been around forever, so in relative terms. So the magazines are sometimes easier to get than the magazines for the 422, or certainly more easier to get than the 2214. So the black plastic grips are kind of thick, but they do fill the hand nicely. It's a very comfortable grip. The checkering is nice, anchors your hand well. The controls are strangely located. The safety is here. So down shows a red spot, knowing you fire. Up is obviously safe. And it's not the easiest safety in the world to use. You kind of have to get your grip off the gun to pull the safety down, or at least I do with my hands. So that's not really a point in its favor. It's also a little stiff. Now, unlike most 22s, this box open on empty. And the magazine, or the slide release, is right here. And it works nicely. And so you don't want to ride the safety once you get it off. You don't want to ride the safety because that will keep the slide stop from functioning. The trigger is a very round trigger with serrations. The trigger pull is very good. It's maybe 3 pounds, and it has a nice short reset. I'm not going to show you that because you shouldn't dry fire these, and I don't have any empty 22 casings handy. It's very, very easy to rack the slide on these. I mean, being a straight blowback 22, it's never going to be difficult, but this is really, really easy. And it's very comfortable in the hand, very good ergonomics, unlike its predecessor, the Model 61. And the barrel is secured in the frame with this nut. It is a fixed barrel. It stays where it is. It doesn't go anywhere. And you do not remove it when field stripping the gun. Now, field stripping the gun is a little interesting, but it's not particularly difficult. Take an empty 22 casing, pull the slide back, and you can see the hole with the end of the guide rod. Insert the rim in there, and then let it come forward on the cartridge, and you can push it forward just a little bit, and then this wedge lifts out. And it only goes in one way, so you can't screw it up. And then you set that aside, remove the cartridge, and you can see the guide rod, which I have to pull back on. There, because now the slide is released from the guide rod, and there's the spring, and the guide rod is in the front, and it actually reciprocates rather than being a fixed post over the spring. Then you just lift the slide off, and that's all there is to it. My, that is dirty. I did shoot this quite a bit today because I like shooting it. So you can see here where the guide rod and spring go in, and those go into this tube over the barrel, or over the barrel and magazine. And the guide rod can poke out the back if need be. It is a hammer-fired single-action gun, so you have to have a magazine in to pull the trigger. So you can see the hammer here, completely internal. And just run a cleaning rod through the barrel, and Bob's your uncle. Reassembly. Is easy if you're coordinated, so I'm out of luck. But you really need to put the slide on first, and that is pretty easy. You just set it in place. Get the spring into the hole. Get that to go with it. And difficult, but it is a little fussy. Oh, here, I've got to get it onto the camera. Okay, so now that that's braced, get the slide in place, and you can see the clip goes in. And as I say, it only fits one way. You can see where the narrow part is, and that's what it has to go over. There we go. Now everything is held together, and we're back in business. So, one of the things that brought this gun back into my attention after languishing for a period was this bushing that secures the barrel, because it came to my attention that a company called EWK will sell you a bushing replacement for a very modest price that has a 1/2" 28 thread that sticks out of the front of the gun. It's a very modest price, and this is a very easy conversion because these guns are ideal for suppressing. Because the sights are up here and the bore is down here, and most 22 cans aren't very big in diameter. So you can screw a can on it and use the regular sights, which apparently a lot of people think is pretty neato. And these have suddenly become popular as a suppressor host. And something along those lines may be in the future for this very gun. So while I was at the range today, I decided to see how this performed with various sorts of ammo. And the only thing it had any real problem with was punch ammo, federal punch. I would get a malfunction or two, maybe every 3 magazines, maybe a little more often. I don't know why. CCI Stingers ran fine. Arms Corps Precision, not the most reputable brand in the world, but they were fine. CCI Mini Mags, fine. Yeah, as I say, the only thing that I had a problem with was punch. I also ran an assortment of old Sears brand ammo through it. And it just ate everything nicely, except the punch. I don't know why. Oh, and I was going to mention the sights. They're pretty good for such a small pistol, but the front dot sight has undotted itself. I don't know if there was a little plastic insert in there or something, but now there's just a hole. And that did give me trouble seeing the sights in the lighting in the indoor range. Also, the sights are drift adjustable, front and rear. And I may be adjusting that rear sight just a little bit. I'm going to shoot it from the bench and see if that drift to the left at 20 yards is the gun or me. It might seem kind of silly to worry about accuracy at 20 yards with a gun like this, but I think this gun makes a really good, compact, easy to carry, like backpacker's companion, or, for outdoor work. If you're one of those very few people anymore who run a trap line, it's light, it's easy to carry, and 22 will do the job for a lot of outdoor things. And at 20 yards, I'd like to be able to reliably hit a bunny. Not that I ever anticipate the need to do so, but it would be good to feel that I could if I wanted to. So, the 2214, you can find them, and prices are all over the place. You'll have a harder time finding one than you will affording one, probably. I checked recent auctions at Gunbroker, and there were very few completed auctions. And one of them went for a stupidly low price. But in the past, I've seen others going for $300 to $600. So, if you want one, you're just going to have to take your chances. I like this gun a lot, and it's not going to vanish into the safe again. I think it's going to be regular use now, especially if I decide it's going to be a suppressor host. Now, the thing about a suppressor is that they're not cheap. A cheap 22 can, you're still looking pretty much around $300. And then the $200 fee for licensing the can, and that's more than the gun costs. On the other hand, they're cool and fun, and maybe I'll scrape up the bucks and do it. We'll see. Anyway, if you happen across one, now you know what it is, and we'll have a much better idea if it's something you want. So, that's it for this time. I hope this finds you well. Stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to you again real soon.